Hey everybody, welcome to the first video as part of a Microsoft 365 playlist. In this session, which will be very brief, I want to give a very, very basic overview to you nonprofit organizations, Microsoft 365, what it is, uh, how it exists, how it can be requested, and some quick tools for how to compare offers. Understanding and knowing there's a lot on potentially to unpack about Microsoft 365, I want to make it simple because I know from years of experience, you're interacting with different resources, different points of contact, whether they be resellers or Microsoft directly, etc. And it can be pretty overwhelming pretty quick based on the amount of information and in some cases misinformation about the products and services that are available. So I'm going to go ahead here. I have a deck that I put together. Again, this is going to be very, very brief. So really, it's basic licensing overview. This is not a full breakdown of licenses. I am going to do that. I'm actually going to probably do it title by title, just trying to cover all of them, and you'll see in a second, in a single video will take forever. And I don't like to digest or give people like a gazillion things at once when I don't have to. So, question is for those that might not be familiar at this point is what is 365? Microsoft 365 is what's referred to as software as a service or SaaS. It's a subscription-based offer, meaning that in order to have continued access to the products slash services, you must pay for it on either a monthly or annual basis. There's two flavors, if you will, of Microsoft 365. You have web-only subscription licensing and hybrid subscription licensing. Web-only is kind of what the name implies, is that it requires access to the internet, either through a web browser or if using a mobile version of the applications through a phone or tablet, an iPhone or an iPad, for example. The hybrid subscription offer provides this web-based access, again, through some type of browser, say Chromium-based browsers, which does include Chrome, but also includes Edge and Firefox. Um, Technical word alert. Safari uses WebKit, so it's not quite exactly the same as Edge or Chrome or Firefox, but obviously also supports web-based access. I bring that up to sidebar really quickly, is that depending on the web browser you use, you might see some small nuances uh, in the actual experience itself. It's primarily built around, based on my experience, security features and the desire or need to enable persistent cookies and or access to input-output devices, i.e. cameras or microphones. So just know that if you're using with a web-based, a different type of browser, especially if you're using one of those privacy browsers like Vivaldi or Brave, it might be slightly different versus using, again, a Chrome or an Edge or Firefox. So the hybrid license provides that web-based access along with the access through mobile devices, phones, tablets. In addition, the full desktop applications for Mac or PC are also available. This is something between Office Standard and Office Professional Plus. Access is still technically in 365 subscriptions. Publisher is not. Publisher in some catalogs, reseller catalogs does still exist as a perpetual device-based license. If you're all in on that, especially like if you're a church, you still technically can access it, though there's no, to the best of my knowledge, no feature and or security updates that are going to be provided for that anymore because it's essentially been sunset. So again, web only licensing, web browser or a mobile device need to be connected to the internet. Hybrid web plus the full desktop apps. Now, a point of note around the full desktop apps is that you don't technically need to be connected to the internet, but unless something has changed in the time of this recording, if you do not connect to the internet once every 30 days, the desktop applications will revert to what's called reduced functionality mode, aka read only. You'll then need to connect to the internet, a public library, a coffee shop, etc. So just keep that in mind. If this is thought process is, I just want the web apps, because the way you download the desktop applications through a subscription is awesome. It's very simple, especially compared to device-based licensing, where you've got to use things like the Office Deployment Toolkit. Um, I'll talk more about that later, because that's which is very interesting. Um, but you're not going to be able to just ride solo. Like, so if it's like I don't need like that, like the all the web apps and the bells and whistles, which actually chances are there are some apps you probably would benefit from using, personal opinion. It's worth noting that because I have seen that happen a couple of times, more so in rural areas. Like, so very sorry to you folks that are like from Appalachia or maybe other parts of the northwestern states, central northwestern states, where the 25-3 rule, the FCC just doesn't hasn't seemed to really kind of catch up to where you're at. Satellite internet's maybe too expensive. Just note that you're not going to, this is not the right solution for you if you're not going to be connecting to the internet in any capacity. So again, we have some examples. So what's an example of a web-only license? Well, there are two, what are called core non-specific licenses. They're Business Basic and Office 365 Enterprise E1. These are web only. You can install the apps through Android or Apple stores, but those are obviously not the full desktop applications. So again, the internet. Hybrid. Examples are Microsoft 365 Business Standard, Microsoft 365 Enterprise E3. So these do include the desktop applications. So learning more and comparing. Well, two resources that I would recommend to use. There are probably more, and you're welcome to put them in the comments because it's amazing doing this for closer to a decade now. How many things are out there that just don't come across the radar. I haven't found, not that I've looked hard for a good replacement for something like a Stumble Upon, which anybody that's old enough to remember that was such a great tool. But this is what I typically go to, or M365 Maps again, and then the Microsoft Admin Portal. So I'm going to go ahead and then before going into this, I'm going to just give you a quick glance of each. So here's m365maps.com. Aaron Dinage is with Microsoft Australia, I believe, still. Very nice guy. There's a lot of work and effort that goes into putting these up. These are simple diagrams, well, simple-ish, very visually appealing. They're uh, they're they're a great starting point. They might not be an end point, because while this is some very good information, what some of these capabilities are, these ultimately do link to Microsoft documentation, which I'm going to be honest, I'm generally not a fan of their documentation. Not going to go on a tangent on why I'm not. Anybody that's of any level from basic to advanced IT could explain to you if they have opinion about it, why they like it or maybe like it or why they don't like it. But this does all link back out when you hover over one of these blocks to specific documentation on there. There are certain key areas that are worth noting, like basic underlying features and functionality that are critical for organizations. They're built around things like SharePoint Online Plan 1, OneDrive for Business Plan 1, Exchange Online Plan 1, which you'll see here. These are the core underlying functionalities for email, store, and then storage in one of two different capacity SharePoint sites or individual OneDrive storage. You'll see some of these features, particularly those consistent across all subscription types, right? The apps themselves are actually called, and depending on the version, Microsoft 365 apps for business. In the case of enterprise, I believe they're still called Microsoft 365 apps for enterprise, but it's generally it's the same somewhere between Office Standard and Office Professional Plus in terms of the desktop applications. And of course, there are more bells and whistles as you kind of go along here. So you're moving from a web-only license to hybrid licenses here. So then the question is you're going through these different types of licenses, because the business class is a great class. They are capped at 300 each, so you can get up to 300 business basic, up to 300 business standard, up to 300 business premium. It's an SMB license, but I mean, we're nonprofits, so I mean, we are the we are the S part of SMB for the most part. Some are large enough to maybe consider the M, but this is a great jumping off point in terms of what an organization might need. So say if I'm looking at the two of these, business standard or business premium, or business premium maybe, and like an enterprise license, I want to be able to kind of compare them in a slightly different way. Like I can kind of see what's going on here, but another way in which you could view that within the admin portal is going to billing, purchase services. If you've authorized a direct reseller, such as TechSoup, which side note, I'm TechSoup's employee and my full-time equivalent. But it could be anybody, Pox8, Software One, CDW, TD Synnex, doesn't matter. The best way to be able to view this, the only way to be able to view this tool is actually by selecting the purchase from Microsoft offer. One note before this eventually loads is kind of a bummer is you cannot export this. So that's the thing about this I don't like. They've got a bunch of buttons in here that I don't really understand the need for, and this would probably be one of the best things they could add. So if somebody from Microsoft happens to be watching this, please modify or add if there's a feature or function add capability. I would love to be able to see an export as CSV or export as PDF or something. This is where actually even something like Copilot would be ideal to be able to do that kind of comparison. So say I wanted to compare Business Premium with E3, you can select up to three licenses. I believe it's three, might be four. Um, but you get the idea. Obviously, you have to have at least two in place in order to compare that. So I'm going to go ahead and hit the compare button. And here you can see an apples to apples comparison in each. This is kind of where you can bounce between the two resources as well, or where it kind of makes sense is, okay, see this, maybe need some clarification and go between the maps. And you get down into here, and this really gets down into the nitty gritty, and that's why I love this, and I wish this was exportable. Like using a control print function, I've not gotten that to work successfully. So if that's something you have a skill set around, you're like have at it. The infographics here are actually very helpful. Um, the nice thing about these like the information that's in there is it's very plain language, like email in place archive, so unlimited storage in the user's in place archive. That's actually I don't think true, and that's where it kind of comes like you kind of bump up to some things. I've seen a lot of different things around claims of 1.5 terabytes of total capacity, including in-place archiving, 2 terabytes, 2.5 terabytes. I don't know if that's actually technically quote unquote unlimited storage. So that's where a case of engaging with a reseller, some like a licensing area, partner, consultant, advisor, whatever you decide to go with, to get some clarification on that. Because even somebody like myself that deals has been dealing with this for years, Some of these things I've kind of am like, I'm not quite sure that that's exactly accurate. Maybe even to the contrary of its accuracy. But you can expand down on here, and it's important to kind of take a look at that because again, this is remember that Exchange Online Plan 1. Going back to the visuals and the maps, this is where you see the differences, etc. So you can obviously scroll through this at your leisure, but this is a really great way, these two resources, to being able to identify some features and functions. Again, connecting back to documentation, where honestly, if it's really kind of over your head, like if you have integrated Copilot running through Edge, or you just even want to run it through some type of AI tooling to just please summarize this information for me in layman's terms, so you can kind of hit the key points. I would definitely recommend doing that. And again, you're building off of those two resources. So when it comes to purchasing itself, there are a couple ways to buy. You can buy Web Direct through Microsoft, which interestingly enough is called Commercial Direct, but not to be confused with the commercial channel. So there are a couple of different segments through which Microsoft is resold. You have the charity channel, which is important to us. You have a commercial channel. You have an education channel. Although there's going to be some, I think, changes that occur to that with Microsoft Elevate possibly synthesizing charity and education to a certain degree, or maybe even holistically at all, which I think actually would be great for the space. If it doesn't have, in fact, go through, I've come across literature that says that K through 12 in community college will ultimately end up under basically under charity provisioning. Four-year universities, et cetera, I think will continue to kind of operate in an island on their own. Generally, those operate under something called an enterprise agreement, which you don't need to probably know what that is. But just if somebody's watching this and they say have a school division, just kind of keep that, like file that in the back of the brain there is that you might find that eligibility will ultimately kind of carry over because there's changes around eligibility as well that have recently occurred. Not fully aware of all of what those are because Microsoft uses a company called GoodStack for validation services, and communications and documentation around eligibility are kind of scarce or hard to come across. And then you have for the other way to purchase is through what's called CSP. Those are cloud solutions providers, direct or indirect resellers. Um, Indirect resellers are just basically what it implies. Somebody will kind of administrate and or resell uh, on behalf of, right? But they don't have necessarily the means to place like the request. They'll manage your billing, but somebody else will actually manage the request process, typically which flows through something called a Microsoft Partner Center. So there's kind of like an extra layer. It's not bad to have a middleman necessarily because indirect resellers might offer something called like SNS, basically, which is sales and support. They may have support offered as part of like a larger package that includes like a service level agreement. That's very important. Always make sure that like that's something like that you ask about. And if whoever you're working with does not like understand like the SLA or can give you no information about that, that's maybe not somebody that's a good fit for you. And then you have direct resellers. So then you have organizations that not only provision the licensing, like purchase, but they manage the purchasing and billing component as well. Now, there are different degrees of like SNS or sales and support that are offered. Somebody that is your partner of record that is selling to you um, serves as your base frontline support. Now, keep in mind, they've sold to you, so the baseline frontline support. You can have a partner of record, but not have purchased from them. I'm not going to go over that because I'm going to talk about that in an admin video that I'm going to do later. Um, but it is important is that the ping ponging backing around between support is a terrible experience. It's become actually very very prolific at this juncture, especially in this last year. Um, so it's important to know not just what you have, but who you requested from, because somebody who you have as a partner that you've not requested from is not liable to provide support for you. Now, some organizations maybe will, just because that's in their nature. But just know that if you haven't actually requested from one of these types of resellers, and you will need to go. You most likely have requested from Microsoft. Microsoft will serve as your support partner. If Microsoft tries to redirect you, it's my recommendation that with this knowledge that I mentioned, that you're aware of that, and you inform the agent that you're working with, which is most likely what's called a BPO or business partner organization. So they're subcontractors. It's important that you are aware of some of those situations so that you can advocate that no, that is not I have them as a partner, but they have not sold my 365. I bought perpetual licensing from them. I bought the 365 through you. You're required to provide the support. So just be aware that not just like with just purchasing in of itself and the ways to buy is that there's some corresponding responsibility between the two. I've already gone over this. I kind of jumped ahead in this slide. I actually originally had this, I think, further up. But again, Microsoft, the M365 maps, and the Microsoft admin comparison tool are a great place to start. So just again, like, don't want this to be too long, too much information, because I'm starting to feel like it's borderlining on that. I just wanted you to understand again what Microsoft 365 is, the two ways basically in which it exists. I didn't touch on add-on or core licensing. Um, that's going to be a separate video. Like I'm gonna put that in when I start to break down like each of the specific license types. Like I'm going to go in and using the diagrams in part, like that I've shown earlier, to kind of touch on the key areas, but I'm going to do the synthesizing for you. Um, you'll see the documentation, but I'm going to give you my experienced view point on and consolidate and synthesize like what basic reporting is, for example, because it could be a lot of paragraphs, but it's really at its core, it's probably just some of these features are just at their core, just very, very basic. And I also want you to see them. I don't want you to read about them. Like, okay, this is good that you've got this information, but let's see this in action because to me, like seeing it in Word format or even image format that's not actually like what it looks like in real time is yeah, it's just not, in my opinion, not very helpful. So hopefully you found this video beneficial. I don't care, thumbs up, thumbs down. Um, I love the feedback, like comments. Please include them in there. I will try to answer as many questions as possible. Like, keep the comments clean. Like, if you're looking to say some like kind of off the wall things, go to Twitter or some other place where that kind of action is encouraged or whatever. So keep the comments like pertinent to that. I don't mind if they're like not necessarily directly about like a Microsoft area, but as I scale these playlists like on different things, just for the sake of me tracking these questions, make sure that it's just specific like to the at least the product vendor itself. Like if it's kind of jumping over like from like, hey, like SMIM encryption versus like Intune, I don't care. Like that's not a huge jump. But asking me Google questions like in Microsoft, it's like it just makes it like it just makes it harder to kind of keep tabs on things. So please put the comments in there, the questions in there. I look forward to that. So yeah, this is going to be dropping in a couple of days. And then I'm just going to kind of start breaking down the playlist like Microsoft license subscription one by one by one. Um, a point of note in wrapping, Microsoft 365 has probably like 360, 70 plus subscription offers. Not all of them are available at charity pricing or in that charity quote unquote air quotes segment. I would say about two-thirds ish, and I could be wrong. Anyone's welcome to correct me. Two-thirds, maybe three-quarters of the products that are actually like generally available are available at charity pricing. There are quite a few products that aren't, and it's important to know that you can purchase from both channels. Like, say, if there is a specific product that is not charity, Copilot Business is a perfect example. That is technically a commercial license, but it can be sold and sold to and bought by charities. Um, the recording of this is March 9th. This will drop in the next day or two, or three maybe. There are promos that are actually being run on that. So if you're working with for example, a direct reseller, they can certainly tell you more about that. Um, and how that add-ons license works. But that's just an example. So it's not always what you see is what you get. So also when you're purchasing not either from Microsoft or from a vendor, there's a very good chance that a vendor, because I really honestly haven't seen one that necessarily throws out all of what is available in just on their site, like in just one kind of plain single pane of glass, if you will. Um, and then if you do come across vendors that you can technically search for all of what they have, and you're going to get answers and responses. One of the things I've discovered is they are very light on details, like in terms of like what a manufacturer part is, what a product SKU ID is, etc. And um, I'm not really going to talk about those things, though. If people ask, I'm happy to go down that rabbit hole. So it's kind of like it's kind of six of one, a half dozen of another. Um, you can find it, but not necessarily know a lot about it. You can know a lot about it, but not necessarily find it. But again, that doesn't mean that it's not something available from, say, a direct reseller. So again, basic overview here, Microsoft 3 introduction, if you will, over slash overview. I'm going to start again seeding this Microsoft playlist. I'm going to again go through the licensing and then I'm going to transition. And there's going to be a lot of those videos, obviously. And I'm going to try to get those out as quick as possible. And then I'm going to transition over into features, functions. I'll probably start high level, which is just a general admin walkthrough, talk about what's called role-based access control, and then we'll just kind of go from there. So a lot of videos. I've got a spreadsheet with a production spreadsheet, so ready to rock and roll in 2026 to answer as many questions, produce as much content as possible, and answer as many questions as possible. Um, Off chance, because I've gotten this in the past, no, I do not accept donations of any kind. Don't buy me a coffee. I have my own coffee. I don't draw salary from this. I don't, I do this because of two parts, one part love, another part frustration. I'm not going to say which is the greater proportion. Anybody in the tech field could probably answer that. But yeah, this is like done just because, and that's what this is supposed to be, is it's supposed to be informational in a way that years of experience, years of hundreds of thousands of hours of work, some of them very frustrating, to kind of peel back the curtain of these products and services that are available to our sector. So again, for like the fifth time, I'm actually going to sign off. So again, please throw any comments, questions that you have in there. Keep them clean. Spam folks, find somewhere else to spam, maybe like a popular YouTuber. I don't know. I don't encourage that actually. But leave this community for like people that are actually in it. If you are out of I'm glad I'm rambling. If you are out of the side of the United States, there's several nuances. I'm presenting this specifically from a US centric lens. It's not that there's not a lot of like application that carries over, but I'm not going to speak to GDPR. Like, I'm not going to speak to other things that I don't know about, and especially that I'm not certified in, because that's not my thing. But if you're looking for stuff like that, that's especially region specific, just toss it into the comments again. And if I know somebody that is well versed in that and or even a creator especially, that's their area of expertise, that's where they live, that's their area of expertise, I'll definitely tag them out like or link them out just because I think it's really important that resources be local and that you work with somebody that is your neighbor, if you will, because they're going to know your neighborhood better than somebody that's halfway across the world, just personal opinion. So yeah, hopefully you enjoyed this video and be on the lookout for these additional um, these additional demo session recording walkthroughs that I'm going to be seeding in the coming weeks and months.